Hello, we are here today. So happy to be hosting Chris Smith of the Utopian Seed Project, the executive director of a dynamic 501c3 here in our area. He's also a wonderful author of a great book about okra. He'll have to tell us about that. And we're also joined by Pat Battle, the director of Living Web Farms. Very excited to be here with you to talk about the Trial to Table Spring Celebration. Certainly, after a long winter, we all love our spring celebrations, and better yet, spring celebrations with fantastic local, organic, community-made food. What a great event coming up this Saturday, May 13th, 1:30 to 4 p.m. All right. Thanks for being here, Chris. And Pat, tell us about why we're here celebrating this great event with the Utopian Seed Project.
Okay, Utopian Seed Project is an organization that I'm thrilled to have in our region. Is doing the important developing crops that we will have available to us in a time of unstable climate fluctuations, and doing it in a way that makes it immediately accessible to the backyard grower. Also doing the important work of showing people how to use these new crops, and doing that in a really incredibly creative way, whereby they, I don't know what part of your funding it is, Chris, but are raising some significant money while providing one of a kind event that happens several times a year. I mean, but just unto itself, these tastings are although it's just apparently a few small platters, I have left them completely sated and by the creativity of the chefs with crops that I do not know much about. Some I know a little bit more about. I love that they're teaching people about how to use sweet potato leaves. That's a total lost opportunity for a great number of people that grow sweet potatoes here in the mountains. They're actually incredibly delicious and high in protein. Complements the potato, which is high in every other nutrient except for protein. And just doing really special food that any one of those plates could be the reason why you bringing in young creative chefs working with products that I love, that we're slowly getting introduced to the people that are really dynamic, such as roselle, taro, turmeric, a lot of the roots that we didn't know we could grow before, that we're learning now that we can grow because of the mission of the Utopian Seed Project and their deep base of knowledge from the region. We have some really creative growers here that have tapped in, and I love that this event is so much fun. It's just like a great way to spend an afternoon, and it's also raising at least some money for what in my mind is a critical nonprofit to the area. The Utopian Seed Project is also seed growers initiative. Important. Anybody that was here for the pandemic knows that immediate local seed availability, if we're going to be resilient, we must have it. And the Utopian Seed, the nexus for that. So it's an event. It is actually one of the better ways to spend a Saturday afternoon here in the mountains.
Well, that is so great. And I have not gotten to attend one yet. I would love to. Maybe this weekend I can do it. Maybe even go and maybe film something, right? Let's get a video going. I would love that. The mission of the Utopian Seed Project is to responsibly grow, research, educate, and celebrate a wide variety of crops and varieties to support diversity in food and farming, with a vision to grow an engaged community of growers, gardeners, farmers, foodies, cooks, and chefs. Really, everyone who embrace diversity because they understand and believe in a resilient, delicious, and equitable food and farming system. Thank you, Chris, for being the leader of this wonderful organization. We're so happy to support you today and learn more about Utopian Seed Project and what you have in store for us this weekend.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of continue on what Pat was saying, that as the Utopian Seed Project, we're growing a whole bunch of different diversity, and we believe that we need more diversity in our food and farming system, because that's what will create more resilience in the food and farming system, certainly as we see climate change and other supply chain shocks. Pat mentioned the pandemic. We've definitely kind of had a wake-up call that our food system is maybe more fragile than we thought it was previously, empty supermarket shelves and all that kind of stuff. But instead of focusing on those kind of like scare tactics, we're like, well, how can we look at the abundance that the food system could bring? And seeds, everything we do is rooted in seeds, and you can plant one seed and get thousands back. And it's a real inspirational baseline to be working with these seed crops. And then when we look at their ability to adapt and grow in different regions, then it just opens up a bunch of possibilities. And these trial to table events are an opportunity to celebrate Pat used the word creativity through the hands of the chefs, but the abundance of the food, the diversity that the food system could represent if we changed the way we were thinking about it. So it really is aiming to be celebratory and to highlight and spotlight all these different crops that we're growing right here in Western North Carolina. We want more farmers to be growing them. So that's the crop research side of the nonprofit. But we also want consumers, chefs, added value food businesses to be engaging with these crops as well. So we can kind of like bring the food system up in terms of supply from the farmers and demand from the consumer base. And yeah, really these events are to spotlight all that could be grown here in a real delicious, fun, accessible way. So that's the base line of it. We try and keep it seasonal. Spring is a challenging one for us because we're just, this is when food is ramping up and we're working with a lot of crops. And so this particular event, we're working with a lot of tropical root crops that we've been turning into winter storage vegetables. So Pat mentioned taro, but we're also growing ube. We've been working out how to grow cassava. We have arrowroot, gingers, turmerics. There's a lot of seeds that can be turned into flowers like okra seed, and we use corn flour from regionally grown corn. So a lot of kind of base winter vegetables plus spring greens is what we handed our chefs. And basically these trial to tables are just, we give a pantry list to the chefs and go, here's the ingredients we want you to work with. A lot of them are new to this area, not the chefs, the ingredients. And then the chefs, create 2 small plates each, and then they offer them for taste sampling at this event, and people just walk around and can engage with the chefs, enjoy the food. It's a relaxed, casual environment. We talk a little bit about the Utopian Seed Project, but really it's an opportunity to eat a whole bunch of delicious food that you may not have experienced before.
Well, you actually have some wonderful projects that are being supported by this fundraiser, right? It's a fundraiser, and you get to have this wonderful experience and help fantastic things you're doing, like your experimental farm sites, your crop stories outreach, the People's Seed Project, being a model of seed sovereignty and regional adaptation. I love the programs you're doing, Chris. And the Utopian Seed Project is really bringing it to the people with these events, but also it's supporting so much more.
Yeah. And as a point of clarity, because I think it's kind of important, if some people with funds want to make a donation and support us in that way, or sponsor these events, then we can bring in extra money that way. But we don't actually think about these events as fundraisers. We think of these as an opportunity to do education and outreach. So the ticket price we have on a sliding scale with a minimum ticket price of $25. So for $25, you can sample 8 different plates. You can get a drink. We have a Utopian Seed Project tasting table. So we want that to be accessible and good value for people to be able to come and enjoy. And we also believe in compensating our chefs. A lot of these food events often, unfortunately, rely on a kind of an extractive model in terms of chef skills and expertise and time. And we really try and fairly compensate the chefs and provide a food to the chefs that we've grown. So yeah, these events aren't really a fundraiser for us. They're an opportunity for us to, show a food model that is fair and equitable and accessible. And that's more important for us in this situation than making money on the events. Although obviously 501c3, if you have money and you want to pay more for your ticket, then that's an option too.
Right. So we've got 25 minimum, 50 suggested. And if you want to do even more, you're welcome to do it. And Chris, even if you don't say it as a fundraiser or think of it that way, you're inspiring people. And it really is. People, I'm sure, are going to be very inspired to support you in this way.
Yeah.
And I would say that this is one of the more brilliantly designed events that I've ever. The one that I got to go to anyways was wonderfully convivial. I saw people I hadn't seen in a long time. We got to hang out. I'm going to turn off my picture here because it says my signal's unstable. And also, I mean, like I've already spoken to, the food is very creative, but also the tasting, getting to taste the ingredients. And getting to taste the ingredients and make decisions and figure out. Like I basically had written off long beans. I didn't. They were kind of interesting. You could tie them in knots. I used to work at the Highland Lake Inn, and they would put a long bean, they'd cook it and tie it in the knot and put it on the plate. And that's, chefs like their showmanship. But I'd eat it and go, not so exciting. But there was one which I lost my nose again someday, I'm sure, that was notably full. And that kind of allowing other chefs and other farmers with what is there and telling people what the ingredients are in these, and the opportunity to talk to the chef about these ingredients and stuff. That is brilliant, because we're not going to get people to adapt these exciting new crops. Don't help them to understand them. And so I'd say that the Utopian Seed Project is moving forward the need for developing new crops at an incredibly dynamic rate. And that, I thank you for that contribution to our community.
All right. Well, it's very exciting. Get your tickets now. You can register. There's actually a Facebook event that is connected to the Utopian Seed Project on Facebook. Check out the link and get your reservations right away. Chris, tell us about your book. You've done an amazing okra book, one that is just needed to be written. Tell us a bit about your growing into authorship and about the book and what's been happening as far as since it's gotten out there, how you're doing with it, and tell us what the book is titled.
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. I will happily talk about the book. I just want to follow on from Pat's thing briefly.
Okay.
So Pat was talking about the yard-long bean trial that we did last year, and we had 10 different varieties that we allowed people to sample and then give feedback on the tasting. So we always try and incorporate some kind of interactive trialing component. And this Saturday is super exciting because, again, we're working with these root flowers, and we're going to focus on 3 roots. We've got ube, which is a yam that's purple all the way through. We've been working on an edible line of dahlia tuber roots that you can eat. A lot of people know dahlias for the flower, but don't know that you can eat the roots. And then we also have been focusing on taro as well. So you can use taro as a flower as well. And so I've got Chef Jamie Swafford and Chef Luis Martinez are going to come, and they're going to make 3 different flatbreads out of each of those flowers. So there'll be a purple one from the ube, a dahlia one, and a taro one. And people can taste each of these different flatbreads to see which one they like. So they're all like gluten-free alternative flowers that work in different ways. So you'll be able to really taste those different flowers. So that's a pretty exciting component that makes these events a little bit different as well. But in terms of the book, I wrote a book called The Whole Okra, which was published in 2019 and then won a James Beard Award in 2020, which surprised me as much as anybody else. But that was pretty fun. One of the things that's relevant with the book is the subtitle is A Seed to Stem Celebration. So we always try and do things in celebration because we should, if a food system isn't fun and delicious and exciting and innovative and creative and all these sort of things, then we're going to struggle to get people to engage with it. I mean, it's great that it's also climate adaptive and nutrient dense and all these other important things. But if we're not really, really enjoying it, then we're going to have limited traction. So I think starting with celebration is always a really good grounding point. And yes, we're going to talk about climate change, but I want you to enjoy it first. And that comes through in these events as a kind of a philosophy, but also that seed to stem concept where with okra, the whole plant is useful and largely edible. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers, the seeds can be used as an oil or a flour. The pods are obviously edible, but also in lots and lots of different preparations that maybe people don't always fully utilize. So that whole seed to stem concept is something we bring into the project at all levels. And, you know, Pat mentioned using the sweet potato leaves as a real nutrient dense food that you can eat those leaves and still get a sweet potato crop. And there's so many plants out there that we grow. If you're a home gardener, you're probably already growing them and probably composting a whole bunch of food that you could otherwise be eating. So a lot of the times these Trout to Table events, we get to showcase different varieties, different crops, but also different uses of crops you probably already know. And I think that's a really important component of what we're trying to do as well, with the Trout to Table and the Utopian Seed Project. And yeah, the whole okra was kind of like, in some ways, my launch pad for the Utopian Seed Project. Is I went deep down the rabbit hole of celebrating okra and all it can offer, and the Utopian Seed Project is going deep down the rabbit hole in lots and lots of different directions and applying that kind of seed to stem philosophy and crop celebration with a whole bunch of different crops that could be grown in Western North Carolina.
And we kind of did in 2019 with squash. And one of the things we did was cook the young leaves squash. And we learned that you got to cook them long enough. You don't want to eat, but everybody was taken with the quality of the flavor. I had some folks from Laos here last year, and I was talking about the Thai and southeastern squashes, and they were looking at me and said, yeah, we grow those. We mostly grow them for the greens. Mm-hmm. Blew my mind because I love those squash. So, and one, Chris, that I wonder if doing, I was reminded of it today by last name. His last name just went out of my head. But anyways, by John Farm, and he
Pat, you broke up for a second. Can you repeat that name, please?
Well, for some reason, John's last name is going on in my head. His last name just went out of my head, but it'll come back to me. Anyways, he is from the Middle East. His family's from the Middle East. Egyptian spinach, also known as Jew's mallow. And he was just saying, I told him doing it, and we could talk about doing this together, Chris, too. I've been talking with Amy Hamilton from Appalachian Seeds about it. Growing a specific crop, not to be one that people don't know, but that is used by an ethnic culture, a culture prize food in their culture, and growing it really well, and then inviting people from our community into cook, presenting how, and then have them cook it, and then that food with to sit around and talk about that food and what it means to them. So I always thought about the Egyptian spinach, the dish in his family that is really important. And he was inspired to, which is another one of those plants. Eat not only the beans in so many different stages, you can eat the pods, you can eat the leaves. It's a multi-purpose nitrogen fixer and has extra floral nectaries even when it's not in bloom to feed the beneficial insects. That we're looking at many ways. I believe you're right, Chris. If we have to do it because we're all scared to death, we will solve it when we realize that the solutions will make us richer and make our world a better. That is the solution, and the Seed Project is on the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, definitely. And that makes me think, Pat, that idea of telling stories and the connection between food and growing food and community and sharing food in that way, and the conviviality that grows and the connections that grow. And it leads me around to crop stories, another great project you have, Chris, at Utopian Seed Project. Crop stories, a concept that takes a deep dive into specific crops. Yes, Pat?
1 second, John Massey.
John Massey, yes, Veterans Farm.
Sometimes that seems
Veterans Healing Farm.
The moment, to pull it up. Yeah, go ahead.
We love John Massey. Shout out to John Massey over there, really rocking out at Veterans Healing Farm. But yeah, looking at deeper connections and understanding within our food system, crop stories is one of the projects of Utopian Seed Project. and really focusing on culture and cuisine and sharing, promoting, and educating crops with the stories that go along with them that connect the regional ties to people and the various plants. And a really beautiful project. And I'm very excited what you're doing with the Ujamaa Seed Project with the stories as well. I learned so much from Benita when I saw her at the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association Sustainable Agriculture Conference last year about some of the new things that common ingredients we'd never thought about in whole new ways. And, when we do that and we start to utilize all the parts of the plants and eat more of everything, our whole abundance of food supply opens right up. So it's really great stuff to tie in the stories with the various uses of the plants. Chris, tell us how you got inspired to start that.
Yeah, well, so crop stories, I mean, I guess I feel I am a writer, and I obviously wrote a book, but I'd been a writer before then. So like I enjoy writing and I enjoy reading. And when I speak to people, then or I guess to back up, when you work in the food world, then it's easy to like take these deep dives, and sometimes you have to step back and realize that not everyone's had the privilege to take those deep dives. And so crop stories is like taking that step back and pulling together a whole collection of, we've got poetry, we've got artwork, we've got photography, we've got recipes, we've got essays, and they're all fairly short and they're very accessible. And so bringing together this diverse collection of like beautiful work into one publication focused around one crop, we're hoping that gives people an opportunity to, begin a thought process or take a first step into engaging with their food on a different level. So crop stories is really, it's an outreach tool, it's an education tool, it's another celebration tool, to be able to just, how do we reach everybody? And like when we talk about food and the food system stakeholders, then really we're talking about everybody. And some projects we can do very specific with farmers, some we can do with chefs, but really the food system is bigger than that. And I want to make sure we're trying to include everyone. So between the website and the printed journal, we're trying to get these, really beautiful stories out to as many people as possible. And that's kind of the heart of crop stories. We were lucky with that concept because we got a small grant to start writing a journal or putting together a journal just on collards. So we did that in 2021. And as we were in that process, then the wife of one of my board members used to edit a magazine called Crop Stories. And so she was like, you're doing what we were doing 5 years ago, but our publication for whatever reasons went under, but she still had all the back issues. So she said, why don't I give you the back issues? You can take on the name of Crop Stories, and then you'll be launching something that already has a history. And so that seemed like a win-win. So we kept Crop Stories alive and relaunched it as a Utopian Seed project, and then published Collards, which was our first one, but the 7th in an ongoing series. And so that's how we launched Crop Stories pretty quickly. And now we're working on issue 8, or our second one, which is all going to be around southern peas. And we're reaching out to, it's the same concept, writers, artists, illustrators, all this type of thing, to pull together all the wonderful stories around this single crop.
That is so great. I see you've got the magazine, you've got a podcast, you've got videos. Go visit the Crop Stories website. Go to utopianseedproject.org/crop stories up there, and you can see all of this, learn more about it, and enjoy. And then what a fantastic synchronicity about the Crop Story magazine. Oh my God. If that doesn't show you you're in harmony with some universal support, I don't know what does. That is really great story, Chris.
Yeah, it really fell into place in a real great way. So we're excited. We're going to publish one a year. That's our main plan. We still rely on funding for that one, but the back issues are all available at that cropstories.com website. So that's a great way to purchase some back stories, and then that'll fuel and fund our future publications.
Excellent. Pat, were you going to add something there?
Well, just there are when it comes to food, and people love it. and everybody has their stories about food. And like there's so much in our culture right now, ways that we find to feed each other. And this is a way that we all come together. We all love food. The truth of food is in our mouths. There's no, you know, you get to decide yourself. Everybody gets to have that experience. And it is a way that we experience our commonality, our social connections. You know, we are connected through the plant community. And delving into the diversity of that and delving into the richness of it and understanding that actually is a way for us to be able to trust more in all of it. You know, that is the wonder of it, and be excited by the potential. There's so much, there's some feeling, some running out of steam, or using up the earth, or things are getting to a crisis point. No, there's a depth. There is a depth of wealth. There is a depth that we are connected to all. Frankly, the Utopian Seed Project does a job of getting that across than a lot of other organizations. And these events, these are a celebration of that. I mean, I'm hoping I can convince my wife to go with it to me this weekend, because I had a blast last time, and I'm really looking forward to it again. As a person who made the, when I go out to eat, I'm only satisfied if somebody does something that I learned from. I'm just having the same old food. I can always do that at home. And yeah, $75 or $125 of whatever fancy meal, I think I'd rather do the dishes. But if I go out something that excites me, that piques, that, you know, shows me another way to think about it, then I am satisfied. And what's wild about the Utopian Seed Project is I get many plates in trial to table events. So it's for me, it was a real pleasure to, I get to do it again this time.
And I feel like I should tell you the chefs, because we haven't actually mentioned them yet. We've got so we usually have about 4 main chefs doing 2 dishes each. They are always asked to do 1 vegetarian dish. Often they'll do 2 vegetarian dishes because most of the food we're working with is vegetables. Sometimes they'll supplement an animal protein. And we're going to actually publish the full menu on the Facebook event and the website tomorrow, and I'll be listing whether it's gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, etc., so you can make an informed decision if that's a restriction of yours. But we've got Chef Sunil Patel, which many people in the sustainable food industry around here will know as Patchwork Urban Farms. Fantastic chef as well. Chef Mallory Foster is known as a pastry chef in town, works at Elder Restaurant at the moment, but also does some incredible savory work. She's chefed for us before. She did a chocolate dahlia root cake that was mind-blowing. We've got a lot of people know Eli from Hominy Farms for his bread baking business, uses a lot of local grains, is at the farmers markets, but again, some people are like, he's a chef, but incredible food. I've had his food at multiple events now, and just very creative, very passionate about his food, Lebanese heritage, and he brings some of that to the plate as well. And then we've got Chef Shorty, who is one of the key chefs behind Bun Intended, which started off as a food truck and now has a brick and mortar. And well, Bun Intended is an incredible food truck and does great food, but recently they did like a taro sesame seed kind of like ball type thing. I've not described that very well, but it was delicious, and they were using taro that we'd grown in Western North Carolina. So those 4 chefs are going to do 2 plates each and will be creative and delicious. And then again, we've got Chef Luis Martinez and Chef Jamie Swafford that are going to be the Utopian Seed Project tasting table with those different alternative flour flatbreads. So lots of good options.
Fantastic. It's a trial to table event presented by the Utopian Seed Project. That's utopianseedproject.org. Get your tickets there. Also, a Facebook event is up there. The menu released tomorrow, and you can see this video later to see just what kind of food artistry happens at these events. It's been great to be with you today, Pat and Chris Smith, Executive Director, Utopian Seed Project. Food from our farm trials shared via the talented hands of local chefs. Get your tickets now, Saturday, May 13th, 1:30 to 4 p.m., a community and food celebration. Thanks, everyone.
See you there.
Thank you so much.
All right.